Welcome back to Bread and Butter, where we're serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. I'm Tito Santana. This is episode 110. I am joined, as I can say now, always, my co-host, Pylet. Pylet, how are you doing this week?
Doing well. Ready to talk some new cards.
And we have a very special returning guest, World 8. I figured we're going to be talking about the new cards. That's our subject today. Obviously, we're talking about the new cards in the Emerald Dream, and who better to talk to than someone that is a renowned deck builder, often referred to by the VS report. World 8, how are you?
I'm good. You flatter me. I'm just another Hearthstone player.
Yeah, better and better every time I see you on my friends list, and you seem to be climbing that ladder more and more and more. I expect that when you start getting into those Masters Tour range, you'll still like not forget about us and visit us once in a while, and you know.
You already had Pocket
But
Train on
what have
this,
you?
so
This is true, and he's hinting. I don't know if you noticed on Twitter, he kind of hinted that maybe he's thinking about a comeback. I think he's messing with us, but he posted a picture of his Hearthstone trophy, which he's using as a doorstop, by the way, and said, "I think it needs a friend." So maybe we'll have Pocket Train back. I don't know, but
well, as of standing right now, he is rank 1 in America. So early March.
and he doesn't even really care, right? He's like, "Yep, let's just do it." Worley, what have you been doing inside of Hearthstone lately?
I've been pretty busy with work, life, things like that. But I had a really good January season. It was my highest like finish. And so, I kind of like, okay, I did my try hard. And so February I was like, all right, I'm gonna bump around with a whole bunch of stuff. And then so I promptly like tanked my MMR to like a really it was kind of a wild ride. And then I recovered it. So I was happy to do that by the end of the month. So it was like all this loss followed by recovery, and it was mostly with hand buff hunter, which is kind of cool. Last time I was on this podcast, actually, I was with Ron Mexico, and we were talking like, oh, well, what are you playing? And I was like, oh, I'm playing Grunter, but I added like spawning pools for like some fun, and now it's like that's like the version is to just buff the Zerglings. And at the time, it was one of those things where I had like this inkling, like, oh, this seems like really powerful. And then someone kind of pushed that a little bit more, and that became the deck. And I already been kind of playing that, so it's just kind of a chill deck. You just dump a lot of stats on the board, say deal with it. I've got a little bit of charge damage, and I don't have to worry too much about it. So I've been having fun with that, but excited for new cards.
How about yourself, Pylet? What have you been doing in Hearthstone lately?
I also have not had a ton of time to play because of just busy time at work. So my MMR and rank kind of slipped just because of that. I had a better month last month win rate wise than I did the month before. January was just rough, and I still kind of crawled my way to top 2,000. Last month finished just outside, so I missed 11x for the first time in a while, which it sounds like the 11x cut was a lot higher than most people expected it to be. I heard some people were barely getting it at like 1,200, where the past few months has been 2,000s have gotten it. But it's no big deal. I've been playing the other Hunter deck, the other Zerg Hunter with the Discover focus instead. And that deck is really good when you go Spawning Pool into Parent Sanctuary into a bunch of Giants on turn 3. I had a game yesterday. I played 3 10-9s on turn 3. The Warlock had no interest in the rest of that game. So I managed to pull it out like 3 out of 10 games. I'm waiting for it to come crashing back down. And it will, but I'm enjoying it while I can. That deck is really good. Also been playing in the Coin Concede listener series, and made top 8 for that. I actually went undefeated through Swiss, including playing meme decks the last round since we were both locked in. So I took Rainbow Mage, Draenei Warrior, and Coin Rogue, and ended up pulling out the win with those against decks that were a little bit more legit than what I expected them to bring.
So I remember a few weeks ago, I was talking to you, Pilot, and I said, this Zerg Hunter, it would really, I'd like to probably bring in the Discover package because I think that would be really kind of cool. And you were like, that is stupid. And
We
now you're saying that's a really good deck. So
we've already established I was 100% wrong on all the Zerg cards. I don't think we need to talk about it anymore.
So I was on vacation last week, and I'll talk about that. But that meant that I wasn't playing much Hearthstone. In fact, I figured so going into I don't remember if I talked about this on the last episode. It's been a couple weeks. Um, I was really worried about not hitting Legend because I haven't missed Legend in a long time. And not that it's a big deal if I do, but I'm trying to make sure I hit it every month. And going on vacation for the last week on a short month, February, I was a little worried that I wasn't going to make it. And I was trying to figure out I was playing the Zerg DK, which is a deck I really like, but it wasn't working for me and it felt like the meta was shifting against it to be whatever. And obviously I can't play Paladin because it's not good right now. And I played a bunch of different things and I couldn't find that deck that worked. And then I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna play Shaman. And I won 13 games in a row and got my legend and went on vacation and was happy. And when I was on vacation, I do not think I played a single game of standard. I had a routine because I'm normally staying someone that stays up late, which is really messing with me because I'm getting up at 5:45 to go to work nowadays. So we were all going to bed after being on vacation, and I would in bed. I'm listening to the Dark Tower, the Stephen King. Again, I love it. I'm on like the fifth book, but I would listen to that, and I would play a game of Battlegrounds, and then go to bed. And so I kept up on that, and that's been a lot of fun. But standard, I hit the legend, took a break, and pretty happy. But Pilot, you had a pretty busy week last week. What have you been doing outside of Hearthstone?
Yeah, so I can't remember if I mentioned it last time. I think I did, but I helped direct our school's musical. So our show was last weekend. So between teaching all day and then going to rehearsals and dress rehearsal and shows, it was a very long week at school, living at the school pretty much. One of my students said this week that they were convinced that I just set up a bed at the school and stayed there all week, and that probably would have been more productive and gotten more sleep that way. But show went very, very well. We didn't have too many snafus. We had one moment where we had one scene where a kid was pushing another on a cart and the wheel got caught on something on stage and they about went down. They were okay. Nobody fell off the stage, at least. It was close. But it got a good laugh out of everybody for the last show. So if that's the worst that happens with where we were at a couple weeks ago, I will gladly take that with how many sound issues I had to deal with, because as the music director, I get volunteered to deal with all the audio issues while we're setting up mics and figuring out what works and what doesn't on the fly. And we finally got all that figured out with a really weird system and auditorium. So glad that's done. I have like a week and a half until spring break. We have our adjudicated contest for band this week, and then I can breathe and just kind of coast my way until a week off, thankfully.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, as someone that has to deal with audio for our recordings every week, I hate audio. Audio is the worst thing to deal with. I just want to talk, record, and move on, but unfortunately, it's not that simple. World 8, what have you been doing outside of the game?
Been pretty busy with work. We've had had this big release, like into like entry into the global market, and I'm like on the team that's part of that. So, we're still ongoing with that. But it's just been a lot of work. And the boys are good. So it's just trying to spend as much time as I can with them. Older son, in addition to karate, has decided to pick up lacrosse, kind of his own accord. And for anyone who's not familiar with the sport, it's very popular kind of regionally where I'm from. So this is like the Delaware, Maryland, South Jersey area, North Jersey too, in New York. But it's kind of a very niche sport but I'm excited for him. My wife has a big no playing football reason, or she's like, just he can't play football, which I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can play lacrosse. You can still hit people. Um, but the family's good, and yeah, just trying to stay warm. We're going to Atlantis for a family trip in about 2 weeks, right when the set launches, of course. So I'll enjoy it from a distance, and then come back when the meta settled, and see what's what's happened since then.
Yeah, you'll come back and you'll be like, "While I was there, I invented this whole new archetype that everyone's gonna love." And I mean, it still needs some refinement, but I went 18 and 2, so we still got some work to do. But I would be, I think you've been here long enough, and we've kind of the last couple times had updates on your younger son and the stuff that he's been going through. How's he been doing with all that?
Oh, he's great. Yeah. So just as a quick update, he had a surgery where he had his adenoids taken out. He had his tonsils shaved. It was a long weekend in the hospital, but he's been doing great since then. We were actually kind of hoping that he would like come out of it and be like, "Oh yeah, no, I could talk." That wasn't really the case, but he did come out of it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm potty trained," and we're like, "What happened in the anesthesia process here?" Like this was not expected. So that was kind of good news, but still a challenge to communicate with him, and might have to get him some help, but that's okay. That's all part of growing up, is finding the help when you need it.
Absolutely. And as for myself, Um, was on vacation last week. We went to Disney World as my family does quite often. I know like why you're thinking, Tito, why don't you go anywhere else besides Disney World? There are other places to visit. And I say, I agree. Talk to my wife, but it is what it is. So, as far as everything else, I don't wanna get too far into it because that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down because we talk about it constantly. I am one of those probationary DoD government employees that has been threatened on a daily basis by the powers that be. Um, I love my job. It's already challenging because 'cause I'm living 2 hours away from my family. I'm living in a different place during the week, going back home on the weekends. That's already challenging enough. And then having the threat of a job that I love, that I'm excited to do, um, with everything going on, it for no reason other than, you know, the whims of people that make billions of dollars. Um, so to keep it short and simple, um, vote. If you listen to this podcast, I'm assuming that you actually are like-minded on some level, so go vote, especially in the midterms, and continue on. But we'll leave it at that. So, speaking of voting, which I'm going to make a segue that has nothing to do with voting, we have new cards. And I was on vacation last week, and I haven't really had a time to absorb all the new cards. And we have, I believe, 6 classes so far that have been fully revealed. So we're only going to focus on those. If there have been cards here and there for the other classes, we're not going to worry about them right now. So we're going to start off and talk about these classes. I'm going to start off with Rogue. It's the one I looked at the most, and I'll start off with this one if you guys don't mind. Um, Rogue looks very interesting. I can see why Shadow Step has not been moved to the core, or moved out of core, because we've already lost Bounce Around featuring Garona, which everyone knows is a prominent card that everyone loves to use in every deck. But we're also losing, what is it, Breakdance? So
Breakdance, yep.
There's a lot of bounce cards being removed from the set. But this set has, it looks like for Rogue, has 2 different really focus points. Bouncing cards back to your hand, which I believe there's 1 card that does it, and Shadow Step. So it's not like you can do it a ton. Or there might be a minion that bounces things back too. Do we still have the minion that bounces back? There might be.
The
But
Should still
core
have the
set
Brewmasters.
Brewmaster, yeah.
yeah, okay. So you have some options, and the cards are, things happen when you bounce the cards back to your hand and do it again, play it again. And then you also have a couple other things which are interesting. The weapon looks pretty interesting because it is a choose 2 weapon, and that one has gain poisonous. It's a 3 mana 1/3. choose one, gain poisonous, or gain death rattle, deal 2 damage to all enemies. That seems like that's pretty interesting and fun. But you also have some kind of a different take on Thief Rogue, kind of. It's like you are taking copies of things that your opponent has in their deck, so it's very specifically using their stuff against them, which I believe we've had before, but this is very much more targeted. Like for example, you get Battle Cry, get a copy of the lowest card in your opponent's hand on a 3 mana 4/3 demon. There's also a card that it's a 1 mana card that your opponent draws 2 cards, you get copies of them. By the way, do we know if they have a full hand and they burn the cards, do you still get the cards or do you not get the cards?
I don't know. I think
So
you probably don't, 'cause they never enter the hand. I really don't know. I don't really think that
yeah,
situation is going to come up much, to be honest.
yeah, that's fair. And then you have a couple the legendaries, Renferel, the Malignant, excuse me, is a 3 mana 3/3 battle cry. Trap one random card in your opponent's hand for a turn. Improve for each time you've played this. So you bounce it, you play it again. You're trapping another card for 2, 3, 4. So I'm sure that's something you want to do. And then the other card is Ashmane, which is a 9 mana 7/7. It's like a 9 mana rogue card, but this is a battle cry. Fill your hand with copies of cards from your opponent's deck. They cost 3 less, so it's kinda like a feels like a nice, late game tool to reload. I don't know if this set is good or not, but it feels roguey, and I think that's fine, and it doesn't feel like Poison Rogue or Weapon Rogue really, so I think it looks interesting, I think it looks fun. World 8, what do you think about this set so far?
So like you mentioned, there's basically two themes here. One is a bounce shadow step kind of theme, and then there's also what we've basically seen in Priest before, which is like thief your own stuff. So not like Burgle, which is thief of other classes. So anything that previously was working well with the Burgle stuff, like Snatch and Grab from like Whizbang, which was the 8 mana discounts for every other card that you played from another class, like that's not relevant here. Or like the Con Man and stuff like that. So this is all like, what does your opponent have? And we'll take that, please. That doesn't seem too powerful to me. The one that is kind of interesting is there's a assailant, which basically says if you're holding the same card as an opponent, shuffle it into their deck. This card, we've seen effects like this before. The last time we saw it was Ghastly Gravedigger back in Nathria, which was choose a card in their hand, shuffle it into their library if you have a secret. And then if you played any twist, you'd probably be pretty familiar with another older card, Jade Telegram, which is look at your opponent's hand and shuffle one into their deck. Both of these cards are very good. The Assailant is not a choose. But you do kind of know. So it's a card to keep an eye on. 4 mana 3/5. You can kind of lock your opponent out of some of their best cards maybe, but the rest of the, like, Mimicry is an awful card, and Satyrs is not really enough to justify it. So I'd be surprised if we see this package at all. I think the Spider package is what I'm kind of calling it. Web of Deception, which is bounce a minion, get a 4/4 Spider with stealth. And Web Weaver, 1 mana, 1/3. If you play a minion a second time or a copy of a minion, you draw a card. Both of these seem really good to me. Though the web is enabling the rest of this. But the Web Weaver and then the Harbinger of the Blighted, which is, if you bounce it, you get 2 random 2-cost minions. This just seem like really good tempo cards. The Legendary, which is the run for whatever. Hard to say, but basically look at basically trap a card out of your opponent's hand. Now, again, this I like reaching back to older cards and say, was this a good effect or not? And there was another card actually from Sunken City, called what was it? It was a 4 mana 5/4 beast, and basically it had the same text, and no one played it. That has better stat lines than this. But it also didn't lock your opponent out of like cards for 2-3 turns. So this could be annoying. But for me, when I'm looking to build a deck, I'm going to be focused mostly on the other spider stuff, because I want to be playing it with some higher tempo cards. Specifically the Skulker, the 2 mana that, stealth combo, and then like spell burst, and then if you bounce it, you basically get to do 3 damage, then 5 damage, and then web of deception that, and then you got all this, you just like get a ton of stealth damage going towards your opponent. And we still have some bird from hand, like eviscerate and stuff. So when I'm looking at the set, I'm looking at the the low cost cards, not the top end. But Ashbane definitely looks like it could be super powerful. We still have the Sandbox Scoundrel to cheat this out on 7. So that could win a game right there. You fill your hand with stuff that costs three less, and there's no cap on the floor there. So you could have stuff that costs 0. So we've seen effects like this before, and if it's all from the same deck, that's likely to be highly synergistic. It's not like the Scorpion, which is kind of like a whole bunch of random stuff, and you gotta like figure out a win condition. It's pretty likely that your opponent does have a win condition. So it's actually a pretty solid set. I think the mimicry stuff, not gonna see any play unless Assailant's like really busted, which I don't think it is. But I'm kind of excited for the spider stuff at least.
Web of Deception looks like it's going to be a good card, even if you don't play the rest of the cards around it. It just seems like it's a solid card to bounce some kind of battle cry back to your hand, get a 4 with stealth and all that. And looking at the set, I'm glad that they nerfed Shafar, because I think that this set with Shafar, as it used to be, would be pretty gross. Pilot, what are your thoughts on the set?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what was said. I like what they did with the Thief package, to where we've been seeing some burglary cards that still somewhat work with these, as long as you're not running into other rogues, since it specifically says your opponent's deck. So if you're trying to get the other class stuff, tough luck. But normally when you're taking from your opponent's deck, it's a little bit stronger, but it's a little bit more as fair as it can get, because now it's not just random stuff from 1,000 cards. Your opponent kind of knows, okay, this is what I'm running and this is what I might have to look out for. And normally that's a little bit less offensive to play against. And, it's still at a power level to where I don't think that they're setting it up to be the best thing that Rogue can do. And normally that's when the Burgle Rogue becomes a problem. When that's the best Rogue deck, then that's when things get really warped and people get really angry.
Well, especially if you're stealing with the cards. If they put the cards in their deck, they're going to be better than random. You got, like, if they're intentionally playing a card, I mean, unless they're like some kind of synergy that's only with the other cards and all.
Correct.
They're picking the cards they want to play. So I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. I do like how with the bounce package, they kind of did focus on more of a, when this leaves play, or, the repeated minion effect, rather than just, can I play this broken battle cry 50 times this game? It kind of adds another aspect that we haven't seen for a while, or at least I can't remember for a while. Like there's Harbinger of the Blighted. When this enters your hand from the battlefield, summon 2 random 2-cost minions. That's something that's kind of adding a different spin to that focuses more on a tempo play rather than bounce, 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 and then here's, these battle cries that have built up. One important thing to remember from when they did the Sonya change, they made sure that was still minions. So when you Shadow Step Renfurl, which costs 3, it will cost 1, which means you get extra from Sonya, which means you're trapping more cards with the free version. If that becomes something that we're doing, that's probably the card that it's either going to be the best card in this set or the worst card in the set, and I'm not sure. Well, maybe next to Mimicry, second worst card in the set, in the Rogue set. depending on how strong that bouncing back and forth is without losing tempo. But that's one that I think that we're going to see a lot of people experiment to see where that sweet spot is to make the deck work around that.
I don't like anything you said after Sonya.
I'm sorry.
Someone
had to bring it up.
Yeah, I'm somewhere. I'm sure it's late enough where we could get sleeping already, but I bet you we just made him turn over and pull the blanket a little bit tighter.
I'll take the blame.
All
it's
right.
okay.
So Hunter, I thought that with the mechanic of the imbued and how it reduces the cost of the beast that you play, or I think it's beast, right? Um, I thought we were going to see a lot more big hunter cards, but we really haven't, and I think it's for the better. Pilot, what are your thoughts on the hunter set here?
I agree with that. I was just about to say something similar because we still have a lot of big beast cards from this past year. We still have Egg. We still have the T-Rex from Whizbang. We're getting Mountain Bear back. So we still have enough bigger cards. We still have Plush, enough big beast to where you can use some of this package in that. But they've kind of taken it to where, they've also added, some of these other things, so where you've got some of these mid-cost beasts that have the bonus effects if you're using your imbue hero power to reduce the cost or buff them. So we have a couple of them that have the if this has 4 more attack, summon a copy. If this costs 3 or less, attack 2 random enemy minions. That I think is going to be very, very good since the imbue also buffs the attack. That's a lot of damage for something that's cheap. It already starts as a 5 mana 4/7. So I think the imbue deck is probably going to be able to take a couple different versions very easily, at least to start. I think one will probably outpower the other eventually, but you definitely have some deck building options there. And then they've also pushed a spell package a little bit here again, where it's a little bit odd because we've rotated some of those out and we haven't really had the spell hunter as much, but they are starting to throw some of those in with a couple cards, including one of the legendaries, Roll Bear Mantle. After you cast a spell, summon a random animal companion. That's a 5 mana 3/5, no type, so you can't reduce it with your hero power, but is something to where if you're getting to that point in the game, could be very powerful. A couple other cards that we've seen very similar from Hunter before. 3 mana spell, deal 3 damage to a minion. If it kills it, summon a 3/2 wolf with rush. We've seen something very similar before that actually I think had to get buffed to see any play. I can't remember what the card was off the top of my head now. And then their choose one is also very similar to where you can choose one to deal damage to the enemy hero or summon some wolves with rush. So Spell Hunter seems to be something that they're looking at, but I can't think of off the top of my head if we have enough support for it this upcoming set. But they're going to print more spells, so there's always a possibility of it.
I'm looking forward to annoying people with Amphibian Spirit, which is 2 mana spell, giving a minion +2/+2, and Death Rattle give this friendly minion +2/+2 in this Death Rattle. So it's basically like a growing Greybow on a spell without the taunt. So I don't know if that'll be good or not, but I like the Leapfrog. Yeah, it's kind of like Leapfrogger. I kind of like the idea. I don't know if it'll be good in standard. World 8, what are your thoughts on this set? And specifically, so Shepherd's Crook is the weapon. It's a 3 mana 3/2. After your hero attacks, summon a 3/3 sheep that's dormant for 2 turns. So basically, with this weapon, you'll get 2 dormant sheep, and maybe that works okay with Goldrin if you're looking to clear taunts. But Shepherd's Crook feels like the worst card I've seen in a long time. So I want to know what your thoughts on the set is, and especially that card.
Why that card is it's very whatever. I mean, I think it's cute. It's fun. It's pretty bad. But I think Hunter's a little difficult to talk about because at least in context of this recording, we know that there are nerfs coming. We don't know what those nerfs are, and they're probably going to be hitting Hunter pretty hard. So, at this point in time, they've said, oh, we're probably going to hit the Zerg cards and some other problem cards. And as of right now, going into the new set, the Zerg Hunter is losing like one card, right? Like it's like 29 out of 30 cards are going to be the same. So like if that deck gets like cut in half, it's hard to say what's going to be good left over from that, because a lot of this has to be in context, right? Like independently, Houndmaster, which is the Battlecry Draw Beast, and boot your hero power, and the fact that we have Mountain Bearing Core, like that's enough to have Big Beast. Like those two cards together justify the deck. And I think in terms of other cards, like for Bear Mantle is actually one of the most interesting legendaries I've seen of the set so far. Where I'm like, oh, I want to build around this. I want to like run cash cows and like Wishing Well Hunter. But it's you can still save up some cheap spells, drop them down on 7 and like play a coin, two cheap spells. But it's I like the hand buff stuff right now, and so we've got like Rune Bear kind of like mixes in with the imbue and the hand buff stuff from Perils, so I think that's pretty cool. But this is really hard to assess again without knowing what the nerfs are going to be like, because it's very easy that Hunter's best thing to do is going to be still Zerg stuff, unless they hit it super hard. And then, Big Beast probably has a pretty good shot, but, Discover, there's just like so much that they would have to hit to really impact the last year of Hunter, where these cards are going to make a big impact. But if anything, it's probably going to be Houndmaster and Mountain Bear together.
Fair. And I'm looking at Bear Mantle, and I'm like, I can see every time I face somebody playing Bear Mantle, it's Huffer, Huffer, Huffer. But every time I play Bear Mantle, it's Leoric, Leoric, Leoric. So I know that's just how it's going to work, and it's fine. But since we're already talking to you, Mr. 8, what do you think about the Demon Hunter set? Because it feels like we're doing the same thing that we did in Hunter a few years ago with the Spirit Beasts. And I like it, but I don't know if it's going to be good enough. And I feel like Demon Hunter has been bad for a while. Are we looking at a good Demon Hunter set here?
I'm not super positive on it. Like they don't look as good. They look, so we're talking about the Wild Seed package from Hunter from
Yes.
Naspria, and the two cards that really tied that package together were Wild Spirits, which accelerated everything by 1, and the 5-drop that summoned a whole board of them, right? And the fact that the Stag was absolutely completely busted, for what like all the Wild Spirits were really busted, and these feel like a really toned down version of that, which is all these like dormant minions. So it's hard to say because they're all going to come online really late, especially the one that's dormant for 3 turns. That's just like forever. But I've been doing some deck building and it looks okay-ish. One of the more solid cards is probably just the Corruptor, which is you get one of those random Dredge Seeds and then maybe it dies, you get another one. But these are all just like so late game focused, and it's hard to say if this is going to be enough for Demon Hunter to have a late game. I was talking to somebody else about this, and I was like, okay, even if nothing else changes, because someone was talking about Starship Hunter, as a comparison. I'm like, Starship Hunter is probably still like really good late game. Like those big big Hunter starships are really scary later on, especially if you I'm not really sure what it would look like, but it's still hard for me to imagine that Demon Hunter is going to have a strong late game, and that's what this is pushing. The other consideration is like what do you do with Cliff Dive, right? Like, is that interesting with like the Fellbat or Omen or something like that? And it seems okay, but then again, we're kind of talking about last year's cards. We're not really talking about these Dredge Seeds, which is really the focus of this package here. So we'll it's really hard to to get behind Death Rattle cards without something like Yodel or Death Growl. Like they're always just really hard to activate, especially like this Felbat here, the 7/5 Death Rattle. Like how are we ever gonna activate that? The Fell Hunter, which is the 5/3, is okay-ish because we've got Infiltrate, which is 3 damage AoE to everything, so you can kind of kill it yourself. But yeah, I'm not terribly optimistic about this to be honest. So we'll see how it goes.
There are two cards here that interest me quite a bit, and I'm not saying that they're going to be good or not good, but the legendary, the 5 mana, 5/5 Alarashai battle cry, transform minions into your hand into random demons. They keep their original stats and costs. I think that could be maybe interesting if we can kind of play like some kind of like low to the ground zoo deck, and that's like your top end. But I don't know if we have enough demons to make it worth it. Although, um, Omen. So I lied. There's three cards I find really interesting. Omen is the 10 mana 6/12, which I wish was in Hunter with the imbued power there, because this is a rush, Wind Fury, Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to all enemies, improves after this attack. So I think it feels like it's a good card, but it feels like it's too slow in any deck that we want to build with the Demon Hunter set here. And then we also have the Viled Spear, which is the weapon, which to me I think is going to, if any card breaks through, it feels like this card could break through. It's a 4 mana 2/3. After your hero attacks an enemy, deal your hero's attack damage to another random enemy. So that potentially has some strength and something, but I don't know. It's not like, I think we've been wanting Demon Hunter to get better for a while, and we're still paying for the sins of its release and whatnot. And I really liked Relics. I want Relics back in the core set at some point. Pilot, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's I was excited for the Death Rattle stuff to come back. I really enjoyed that deck before. But this one they're definitely pushing more of an expensive Death Rattle rather than before when we had that a couple years ago. Was it Sunken City? It was a much more, you know, not a super aggressive deck, but you definitely hit the ground running. And then just kind of had enough boards to where you eventually won. I think just kind of glancing through, we do have some bigger death rattles that might be worth it. The question is, how do we get there? And that's where late game Demon Hunter has had the issue for the past year and a half, anyways, is how if we have something that's a good payoff, we don't have enough to get there because you have to put so many cards for that payoff in. I'm hoping that I'm wrong, but we'll see. It might depend on some of the other changes. The Spear, I think, is an insane card. That's just going to go in any attack based Demon Hunter. I am excited for Omen, if nothing else, just because it's something different. It is, something to where if we get something to cheat out Death Rattles or cheat out demons, then that's a huge payoff for that. But that might just be my bias because that's a type of weird 10 mana card that I like to make work, whether it's good or not. So that's kind of where I'm at with Demon Hunter. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I've been like that for the past couple sets, and it hasn't quite paid off, or it's been outclassed by. It's had a lot of sets where the stuff is decent, but it's the third or fourth best deck at what it does. Like the pirate stuff got outclassed by the class that stole its stuff, by Shaman. And it's kind of been that second, third best at its role, and why it hasn't seen any play.
There. All right. So we're moving on to the next class, which I think one of the better classes right now is Shaman. And I'm sure people won't be mad if Shaman's not good for a little while. And I'm not saying that's the case or not. I don't really understand this Shaman set. And if I'm being honest, there's some, like, I like the card Typhoon, which is a 10 mana spell. Each minion gets shuffled into a random player's deck. That seems fun but bad. And then I know I said the Crook, the Shepherd's Crook, was maybe the worst card I've seen in a while. But then I just looked at Emerald Bounty again, which is a 2 mana, draw 2 cards. You can't play them for 2 turns. Um, I don't understand this set at all. The one of the legendaries. I mean, there are the two legendaries seem like they're potentially powerful and interesting. You have a 9 mana 5/11 at the end of your turn. Play the top three cards from your deck. That seems powerful and interesting, depending on how you've built your deck and what you've had. And then you have Merithra, which is a 6 mana 4/4 battle cry. Resurrect all different friendly minions that cost 8 or more. But I feel like we're losing the cards that you'd want to bring back with this card. So I don't really understand what we're doing here. World 8, do you have an understanding of what we're doing here?
I mean, so in terms of this set, at least, right? There's um two things. One is imbue, and the imbue hero power is evolve. Right, you evolve a specific minion, right? So that's why the plucky potting is. If this transforms, it transforms to something that's two more. So you have a nice little cheap imbue target, and Living Garden is fine, right? Like, so you keep imbuing. I've been cooking a little bit, and so the other shell is like some kind of big shaman shell with Maritha and Anhura. And so for I haven't done too much with the big shaman one, although I can talk about it briefly. But with the imbue one, you can kind of just weave enough of like a menagerie stuff together. And then what you do is you play Shutter Block and Menagerie Jug. And so you can have this like huge burst turn. Or otherwise you play it into the Malorn, which is the neutral, the 8 mana neutral, which gives you Wild Gods. So Shutter Block into either of those seems really strong. So that's kind of where I focus that deck on. And so then you also run stuff like Sing Along Buddy, so that you can imbue twice and things like that. That deck kind of skips like Aspect's Embrace. Like we're not too greedy on the imbues. We just play some of the basic ones here, just the minion based ones. And then the other thing with Marithra is you want to kind of be doing this like Cliff Dive or Nebula deck. One of the things that changed, so when Cliff Dive was released, like there was this kind of behavior where if you Cliff Dive and you had an end of your turn card, like Ragnaros, for example, or more specifically, people were trying the Factory Assembly bot, which is the miniaturized that summons a pretty big bot that'll bash something randomly. That was like a 50-50 if that was going to go off or not. But without any real code changes, from what I understand, it's always working now. Like, so Anura seems a lot more compelling if we're cliff diving, and it just plays 3 cards from the top of our deck, like every time. And Marithra summons the nebulas. So I think there's 2 kind of interesting ways here, and there's some garbage here. Don't get me wrong, like Typhoon, Bounty, and Beanstalk Brute. These are all terrible. But you do have kind of 2 directions here, which is Big Shaman and Evolve Shaman, but kind of in more fair sense. So I think it'll be good to check out. And like I said, it could just be like kind of like a swarm good stuff shaman too, lingering around, depending on what the nerfs hit. But I can't really speculate on that quite yet.
That's fair. And I always feel like shaman, like when it gets to a point where you have good cards, it seems like it's always one of the classes that's always the best at. You just play the good cards and you'll be fine. Pilot, what are your thoughts on the set?
Yeah, I was trying to look through like the 8 and up cost cards, and I mean there's some stuff that you can build around there. It just depends on if it's consistent. But yeah, most of that I agree with. I'm very much looking forward to the Hagatha into Typhoon and just constant Typhoons sending the slime back into the deck and just bouncing everything around between decks for a while, because that will be a thing on Theory Crafting Day, and it'll be funny for about a week, and then no one will play that anymore because that's miserable. And that's about the most that you'll do with that card, hopefully. But yeah, it's we've kind of gone back to the shaman sets of old of, okay, there's some cards here that look good, and then I have no idea why these other cards are here. And that's where we're at. And that's okay, because they have had some really strong sets this whole past year. So the shaman will be just fine depending on what all the nerfs are. And I think some of these good cards will find a home.
I think Marithria, how do you say her name? We'll call her Mary for now. I think it's less. I think Mary is going to be less about playing big minions in your deck and more about
Yeah.
imbuing small minions, and then just bringing back whatever you generated and getting value out of that. So we'll see. But Pilot, since I know Red Dwarf didn't quite work out as well as you hoped, how you think about this warrior set?
Dwarf Planet's still
Or
better
Dwarf
than I
Planet,
expected
Dwarf
it to
Planet.
be. I mean, the bar was very low, but it did clear that bar. I did have a couple games of success playing it. So the warrior set has, like we've talked about, a few different directions. They are one of our dark gift quote unquote classes. So they're not leaning into it like they are with Imbue, but they are giving the other classes some sort of dark gift card or dark gift payoff. So we have that. We have some dragon stuff here that is definitely a little bit more aggressive than kind of last time we saw all the dragons from it. So we have some 1 and 2 cost cards. A 1-mana 1/1. If you're holding a dragon, discover a dragon with a dark gift. 2-mana 2/3. If you're holding a dragon, equip a 2/2 sword. So some things there. We also seem to be leaning. We had talked about last time at an enrage package, and they've also kind of thrown into there to where it might be hinting at some egg things along with that. We have an actual card, Egg Basher. Deal 1 damage to a minion and give it +4 attack. That's a 4-mana 3/5. We have a new location. Choose a friendly dragon. Summon a 0/2 egg that hatches into a copy of it. So some potential for some egg warrior along with the enrage and the dragon theme. And then we have big cards. The legendaries. Their Wild God is a 10 mana 1/30 taunt elusive. After this takes damage, gain 1 armor and give this minion +1 attack. I don't think that it's the best Wild God we've seen, but it's definitely one of the more interesting ones. Just having a 1/30 elusive that you have to figure out what to do with. And as you try to deal with it, you gain armor and it gains attack. Something that warrior is very much into, and with it having taunt, hopefully kind of pushing the taunt warrior hydration station stuff maybe away from Ziliax once they nerf that. They did reference that in the upcoming nerfs. They specifically said that card, not what they're doing with it, but that's a high possibility that that's probably something that they're trying to make room for some of these to see more play. But yeah, the big warrior stuff is not, I don't see where that goes unless that hydration station deck changes, but definitely have some room for a dragon warrior or an enraged warrior to come back.
Can you just imagine sitting there after your warrior plays Tortola, and then your opponent in the mirror plays Bladestorm?
Bladestorm's
You
gone.
just sit there. Oh yes, I understand that, but
Thankfully.
if you just sat there, it's probably gone because you didn't want to sit there for 30 iterations of that happening. Well, I think the set looks interesting. I mean, obviously, for some reason, dragons are always have some kind of synergy with being held in the hand. The eggs look fun. I kind of wish that we had again. I wish we had this in Hunter with was it Gorham, where you can the 15/15 that destroys things to the right and creates things, but unfortunately, that's not where it goes. Dragons are fun. I think Dragon Warrior is always kind of fun. World 8, what are you and Enzo cooking up with Warrior?
I think we're on 2 kind of different paths. I was so hyped for enraged stuff to come back, and this is not quite it. I guess it's because I really liked the last iteration of Enraged because it was kind of the snowballing deck, and here this is much more linear. Even though I like, for example, Egg Basher as a card, essentially has four charge on it. It's which is great. It's still, it's not really quite what I was hoping for. The interesting mechanics are still like chemical spill into Tortola, and Tortola is pretty easy to tutor because you have things like quality control and what's the other one? All you can eat. It'd probably be pretty easy to find. Um, so, sorry, quality assurance. I built a dragon deck and it looks solid, but kind of a little boring to be honest. It was kind of linear to build, and well, probably fine. We'll see if it's any good. A lot control warrior in a sense lost a lot of its tools. Really, all he has is basically brawl and hostile invader, but hostile invader is very very good. So don't get me wrong on that. But losing Garrosh's gift is a pretty big loss. Like that gave just the warrior just a ton of flexibility. So I'm actually kind of like in the, I hope the mini set has more enraged stuff. Because I think the dragon warrior should be fine. And I see it being pretty fair, generally. Although the Afflicted Devastator, the 4 mana 6/6, if you just don't even care about your board, it's still 4 mana 6/6. And if you can bring that back with Succumb to Madness, like you're pretty happy with that. Because it does 3 damage to your enemy's board. So I think it could be pretty strong. But again, I had seen like some of the early reveals and I was like, yes, enrage, and then it's not really what I was hoping for. But Warrior should be fine. And again, this is one of those classes where we're like waiting for nerfs, right? Like, what does Mech Warrior lose? Is it possible that we're just going to be doing Boom Wrench into testing dummy? Like, that's still a very legitimate strategy that does a lot of from hand damage in what seems like a format that's not going to have a lot of from hand damage. And I don't know. Well, this is again one of those classes where I think the nerfs are going to impact my view on what decks could be here. But we haven't seen Dragon Warrior in at least all the time I've been playing since I came back to the game in Stormwind. So it's something different, something new, and I generally like egg decks. So definitely give this a shot. The clutch at 2 mana is especially compelling. You don't really play it on curve too much, but you can weave it in later, which is nice, and not really pay too much of a price for it.
That's fair, and I'm looking. I played a decent amount of like the Enraged Warrior when I was most recently good. I think it's a lot of fun, so I'm hoping we get some of that too with that. And again, the eggs are always fun. Moving on to Druid, um, I'm not sure what the win conditions are here, but it's probably more based around the imbue power, right? But I mean, I like some of the cards. I like that I'm not seeing a ton of ramp here. So I think that is a positive thing for playing against Druid. But I mean, it looks like there's a lot of good cards. I just don't know how we're putting them together yet. And I do like the symbiosis, just for the flavor of it. So symbiosis is a 1 mana spell. Discover a choose one card from another class, and every class is getting a choose one card because of the Emerald Dream. So I kind of like that. Um, but Worldy, what are you thinking with this set? You have any ideas early on, or
Well, I mean, they're pushing Jade Druid really hard here, right? Like the idea is to run Hamul and just play only nature spells, and just get bigger and bigger men when you click the button. So I guess that's a playstyle that's appealing to people. There's a lot of defensive tools here, within the nature spells in this set at least. And you can play stuff like Mixologist and Grifta and other ways to generate cheap spells. I think there's a new neutral that does that too. That you don't have to necessarily, you're just nature only. I also want to give a quick shout out to the Evergreen Stag, 6 mana, 6/7 elusive lifesteal taunt. That's a lot of keywords on a very big body. That is going to
Hmm.
stop a lot of aggressive decks and just be a Reno. Um, it's so huge.
Yep.
You have to punt. You're gonna have to probably trade into it twice. If you're an aggressive deck, not three times. So that's just something you just kind of casually play. So it's the big push is to build some kind of Jade Druid and weave in some of the cards from last year, like Sing Long Buddy, things like that. I'm a little frustrated by this set. Different reasons than the warrior, because we saw like Vibrant Squirrel, we've been seeing beasts for a while in Druid, and I was like, all right, we're going to maybe get a Beast Druid back because I loved Beast Druid, and that's not this set. maybe we want to go to Ungoro, but not quite yet.
Well, the exception with one or two minor exceptions, the concept of Beast Druid was always have almost enough cards to be interesting, but not quite, right? So that was always kind of how they went around Beast Druid. It's like you're almost there, you want to do it, but you're not going to be able to. So I don't know, Pilot. What are your thoughts on the set?
I don't know. Beast Druid was a top 3 or 5 deck for a while there. The
Yeah, it was, but before you
composting
started
deck.
playing, it was always almost there. Like they tried to push Beast Druid. They had that one legendary that would copy a beast, and it was always like they gave us almost enough tools to get there, but never quite. And then Beast Druid was good for a while, but it took a while. It took many iterations before we got there.
Yeah, it's probably not a good bearing for the card. I know what card you're talking about because I did make that card work, but it was in a hunter deck. The dual class card. It's like a
I believe so.
choose one, summon a copy, or like buff your beast. I did that in like a porcupine hand buff hunter deck. That was a lot of fun. Um, so and kind of worked. So with Druid, yeah, I kind of in the same boat as World 8, where I was very much looking forward to a token Druid coming back, and there are tokens in this Druid, but not the tokens that we were looking for based on the core set. The the imbue hero power is definitely summoning bigger and bigger green meta, and I do think that there's enough stuff there to where that is probably going to be a deck. It'll probably be just fine. I don't know if it'll be a top contender. It depends on how quickly you can kind of snowball those. We do have some of these do have discounts with them, like Horn of Plenty, two mana spell, discover a nature spell. It costs 2 less. So if you're getting another cheap nature spell, then that imbues your hero power, just in that one card. It just kind of depends on how quickly you can ramp up and be spending mana on a hero power. Do have a couple things that make the hero power cost free, but then you're also paying a card for it. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if it'll be good enough. They did add a little bit of treant stuff with the nature spell, which was interesting. We have Grove Shaper, 5 mana, 3/6. After you cast a nature spell, summon a 2/2 treant with Death Rattle, get a copy of that spell. So there's your epic card for the Druid set to try to figure out what you're supposed to do with it. Because we always have that weird epic of, okay, that's interesting. I don't know if it's good, but it's definitely really interesting. So I think Druid has enough stuff to where they will be fine. Stag is definitely a good card. That's definitely the best standalone card of the Druid set if it has a home, which if the taunt stuff gets reworked, it probably does. Because the Tortolan on 3 into this on 4 is backbreaking. Absolutely backbreaking for anything aggressive. So that probably slides into there and might make the taunt deck a little bit lower curve if they don't need to be using hydration to get Ziliacs and this and that and the other constantly.
God, hydration station still sticks around with Tortola, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I just threw up in my mouth a little. All right. Well, those are the sets that have been released. So, I mean, those are the classes that we've gotten a full set release so far. I guess my last question for we'll start with you, Pilot. Is there anything in the neutral set you find particularly interesting? Maybe something that we'll see multiple decks from multiple classes built around, or will maybe just a utility card that we'll see in lots of decks, or is it pretty varied in your opinion?
Um, Trying to remember back through. I do think there are just some decent utility, especially some of the cheaper cards. We're losing a lot of powerful cheap cards in neutral. That we've just seen in every deck. Miracle Salesman was holding together the one drop spot for a lot of decks for the past year. So we have a couple things that, probably slide into that. I just looked straight past the one that caught my eye. As far as an interesting one, the Curious Cumulus, 4 mana, 3/5. At the end of your turn, give your hero Divine Shield. Um, just an interesting little card. I don't think that is overly good, but it could slot into, if we're seeing, a big minion focus instead of a token focus, then that Divine Shield doesn't care if it has 1 or 10 attack, it's blocking all of it. So it could be something that something runs until there's a better card to slot into there.
There. Um, World 8, how about you? You got any thoughts? And my specific card that I want to ask you about is Envoy of the Glade, going to be played in any class besides any class that would take possibly advantage of the imbued hero power plus having all druid cards or something. The Envoy of the Glade is a 4 mana 3/6 battle cry. Transform all your neutral cards in your deck into random druid ones. That just seems really weird. And it's not an epic.
Yeah, no, that card's forgettable. Um, so I think some of the big ones are Xavius is just kind of like a solid card, 4 mana, 4/4. Discover
Mhm.
minion, give it a dark gift. Like that's just good value. Tutors are always good. I don't know if that's gonna be like incredible, but solid. And the legendary spell is very, very, very strong. The 7 mana Sadrazil, that's a card like it's funny because it is kind of like a druid card because you can do Sleep Under the Stars and act and corrupt it. And all of the cards that the 5 dream cards are just all completely busted in their own way. The regular versions are fine if you really need to just jam it on 7, but if you can corrupt it, it's incredible. The other one that I've seen a lot of, I would say small hype for, or just a glue card, is the Illusionary Greenwing, which is a 4/5, 4 mana taunt, death rattle. Shuffle 2 4/5s into your deck, cast when drawn. Just kind of a good dragon to have around. Um, just kind of it's a good slot into most of the decks. And then the last one is the 8 mana. If you've imbued 4 times, you get a wild god for 1. And that's where we're going to see it's a discover too. So that's where we're going to see a lot of the wild gods. So if the power level's right, and I think it probably will be that, this will not be the Countess level, but it'll be a fun way to kind of justify imbue, and it'll just like weave itself in and, kind of like Exodar, maybe not like make or break, but it'll with other than with like Shudderwalk. I think like Shudderwalk into that card and getting 3 wild gods for 1 mana is pretty insane. Especially because then you can mini Shudder into some of the wild gods. But it's I think that's gonna be those are kind of like my picks. But there is very, very little aggressiveness here, other than maybe Petal Peddler, which is the 2 mana 1/4 dragon that Shadow Ascended. But there's obviously a big push to making everything quite a bit slower. And you can see that from this set.
All right, so that's the 6 classes we have thus far. Next week we will touch on the remaining 5 because I think we'll have them all by then. Hopefully we'll have some information about, who knows, good things. But time to wrap up the show. And for a card reveal show or a show talking about new cards, we're just over an hour at this point. So I think we're doing pretty good. I know we're not talking about every card, but no one wants that, right? We've done that before. Those go on forever, 5 6 hours. No one wants that. So Yeah, it's Pilot shaking his head like, no, I don't want to do that at all. So our question of the week. Normally we ask about dessert, but both World 8 you've been on a million times, so we've already talked about that. I believe it was key lime pie. Am I wrong?
That was my brother-in-law. I like moose. I
Oh,
like moose
fair enough.
tracks. Moose tracks
Oh,
ice
that's it.
cream. Yeah,
Moose tracks.
yeah.
All right. All right. But so what I want to know is how excited are you about the set so far?
Is that to me or Pilot?
You.
I'm. This is actually the first set that I've not bought the pre bundle. Like ever. So I'm not really that excited. Oh, did I lose you?
But we're here.
Yeah. Okay. And so it's yeah. I mean, I think it'll be fine. I'm kind of like in a wait and see here, though. They've definitely decided to slow the game down a lot. Like maybe even by 2 turns, and that's an interesting design decision. So for me, I just need to find a deck that I enjoy. I don't need the whole set to be a banger. I just need to find something in it that I find interesting. Hunter might be it, might not be it. Depends on how it pans out. But I'm honestly more excited about core. I'm getting core for free, so like I like the menagerie stuff that's going into core, and I think there's some good updates there, and there's still plenty of stuff from last year. So, but for this set in particular, there are some things that are interesting, but I don't know if I'm like particularly hyped for anything. So, I'm kind of wait and see right now. I probably will pull the trigger and buy the bundle. I'm not gonna lie, but it is the first time that I didn't just like open up the store and click buy immediately.
Just have to hang out in streams, and maybe you'll win a bundle, and you won't even have to spend the money on it. So, Pilot, how about yourself? Are you excited, or how are you feeling about the set?
Um, I'm excited just because I'm someone who always enjoys new cards and figuring out what to do with them. I do feel like this set, along with rotation, along with the nerfs that they've already referenced, is going to be there's going to be a lot of whiplash right away. Like he had World 8 had mentioned, the power level is definitely looks like it's coming down and everything is slowing down. And I think that we're going to have a pretty big whiplash effect from that, of going from, oh, you have to do something this strong in the first 3 to 4 turns, or have something bizarrely strong on turn 6 or 7, to not as much of that, hopefully. And I think that's going to take some getting used to, which makes it really hard to evaluate, how I'm feeling about this set yet. But once we get new cards and dig into new decks, that's always my time. That's some of my favorite time in the game, regardless.
And also, we've only seen about half of the classes, so maybe there's something interesting that's coming out that will really, excite people and change your mind. Hopefully, it's not Priest, but you never know. So, listener, if you're listening and you've been listening for a long time, we appreciate you. If you get a chance, go ahead and give us a review, or just hit that 5-star button. It helps people find the show. When we have wonderful guests like World 8, we want people to they spend their time to hang out with us and talk. We want people to hear them, and we have amazing guests. So let's help spread the love. World 8, where can people find you if they want to talk to you about
Sure.
Hearthstone or anything else?
Yeah, no, still very active on Discord, World 8, all letters, and just, send me a message. I'll chat about Hearthstone, pretty much anyone. Otherwise, I've been doing more and more streaming, World 8 _HS on Twitch. Less social media lately. I used to be pretty active on Twitter and kind of stepping away from that platform in general. But streaming more and, hanging out in Discord, I think are the 2 best ways to find me.
How about yourself, Pilot?
Yeah, Discord is also the best place to find me. Not quite as active as I'd like to be, but always kind of lurking and chiming in or posting weird replays that I find myself into if I don't just send them to Tito. Forgot about that one game that I sent you where I just called it Hearthstone because I was Dr. Boom Hero with Tess on board. And I don't remember what else. It was a Wishing Well rogue game. It was very weird. It was very fun. I lost, but it's okay. So you can find me on there, Pylet712. That's Pylet. You can message me there. You can also find me on Twitter, but I don't check that nearly as often, and that's at the same handle.
And you can find me pretty much everywhere: Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. I've worked too hard to gain the meager following I had on Twitch to give it up just because of the owner is whatever he is. So we're still there. But you can find me at Tito Santana HS. Worley, you anybody to shout out this week or anything you'd like to promote?
I mean, I'm gonna give a shout out to Pylet here. Going undefeated in a tournament is pretty remarkable. Not to drop a match. It was 5-0, right? Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing. I played quite a bit of THL to know that that's an outstanding record, no matter who the field is, especially with Swiss when your round 4s, round 5s are pretty serious competitors. So definitely give a nod to that. And as a personal shout out, I'll probably be streaming some of that top 8 for the Coin Could See Listener series. So just check it on my channel and I'll be posting that soon, hopefully.
Pylet, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm gonna double up on that and send a shout out to World 8 for streaming some of those matches. Always fun. He did stream when I won the series a couple months ago. I played against Dr. Bombed, and it was really fun to look back and see the perspective of them and chat and kind of see some of the things that you miss live. So always fun to have your match stream. Just check out who's playing, because if it's Hat, be there 5 minutes early or else you'll miss it. I heard that was a speed run game this past weekend, was about 5 minutes and done.
Fair enough. And I'm trying to think about, I don't really have a shout out this week. I'm going to shout out everybody that's just trying to survive right now and get through the first couple months of the new administration, and hope they come out on top and are happy and healthy. But anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see ya.
All right, see ya. Take care.
See ya.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.